So in the previous class, we started out just understanding what is environment. Now when we look at the subject, it's called environment and biodiversity, right? We call it environment and biodiversity. Now we'll start looking at the biodiversity part of the subject. Okay, biodiversity. What is biodiversity? In the very first class, what did I say? We'll teach you how to split the terms and then learn about it. Split the terms. Whenever you are in doubt of what a term means, split the terms. Biodiversity, what does it mean? Okay, diversity in life, because you split bio and diversity. Bio means life. Diversity is how varied it can be. That is diversity. So biodiversity, diversity in life. That is biodiversity. Now we'll straight away go into the most important parts of the subject. The first one we'll look at is something called CBD. CBD is Convention on Biodiversity. Okay. Now what is the Convention on Biodiversity? It is an international treaty to which many nations are a part of. Why? That is the question. If you have a treaty, the first question you will ask is, why do you need a treaty? Right? That we will explain now. Before that, we have to answer one question. What is that? Why is biodiversity necessary? Can you answer? Why is biodiversity necessary? Balance in nature. Yesterday we spoke about how balance has to be maintained within, let's say, a forest ecosystem. Correct? We spoke about how balance has to be maintained in a forest ecosystem. So biodiversity helps in balance in a system. Next. Why is biodiversity necessary? Very generic answers you can give. Why do we need biodiversity? Existence of life. Let's say existence of multiple species of life. As humans, we have a responsibility towards other species and other creatures also. We don't just look at our own propagation. We don't look at our own existence. There is an ethical element to our own existence, and that part of our ethical element is we should also propagate other species and conserve other species. Why else? Okay, I'll answer that now. Biodiversity is not just with respect to animals. It is also with respect to plants, fungi, etc. We spoke about this yesterday, correct? So biodiversity also relates to plants, animals, fungi, etc. Now medicines that you take, correct? Not just Ayurveda. I mean, if you go into Ayurveda, it's everything is plant based and animal based, correct? But even Western medicine that you take, where is the source from? Some genes with some medicinal plants that they have managed to isolate and then make it into a great product. Where is the element coming from? It has to come from some natural resource which they are then manipulating through biotechnology to achieve some kind of a medicine, correct? No, this is the simplest use case. Now let's say you don't conserve biodiversity, then what happens? Let's just look at it very logically, right? There is dependence in nature, correct? One organism is dependent on another organism for its survival. So slowly, if organisms begin to die out, organism can mean anything. It can mean a plant, it can mean a small insect, it can mean bacteria, it can mean a human. Anything is an organism. We saw that yesterday when we were defining it, correct? No? An organism can be anything. Now if organisms begin to die out, what is the effect of it on other species? That is the first question, correct? So let's say, if we'll take big examples so that it's easier to understand. In a forest ecosystem, now let's say the deer die out. What happens? No deer. Then top level predators will die out because there are no deer, because the tigers cannot eat anything. And what happens to the autotrophs? The autotrophs will keep growing, right? The biomass of the autotrophs will keep increasing. Plants and trees will keep growing. Nothing will get checked. So there is no balance in the system. Over time that system will collapse. How and why also you can start thinking about, right? If there is no fauna in, let's say, in a tropical rainforest, then what happens to the flora? There will be decay. There will be decay. How, it is a little more complex, but there will definitely be decay. The same thing is true for all ecosystems and the environment in general. So biodiversity is necessary even to sustain human life. So there is a selfish element also when we say we have to conserve biodiversity. Now, why are the conventions necessary? Correct. So whenever we look at conventions or international treaties or some kind of a convention between different countries, then we have to understand that there is always an economic element to it. Okay, there is always an economic element. If there is no economic element, countries will never participate. I mean, you say whatever you want. It could be soft power, ethical conduct. You can say whatever you want. That is all one side of the story. But if there is no economic element, countries will not get involved in anything. Okay, so there is definitely an economic element to biodiversity. Now, how do you regulate this economic element? You have to come to some understanding, otherwise there is always going to be some kind of fighting. To regulate this economic part of biodiversity that everybody wants a part of, correct? That is where conventions and international treaties are coming in. Understood? No. This is the preface to Convention on Biodiversity. Okay? Convention on Biodiversity is a treaty. It came into existence, or it was adopted in 1992 at the Earth Summit. We will talk about Earth Summit in the classes when we talk about climate change. Okay, there is one class that we talk about just about climate change. There we will talk about the Earth Summit. It's a very, very important summit, conference. You would have heard of UNFCCC. What is UNFCCC? United Nations Framework on UNFCCC. United Nations Framework on Convention on Climate Change. Okay, that is UNFCCC. UNFCCC and Earth Summit are one and the same, no doubt. Okay, so Earth Summit of 1992, CBD was adopted. When did CBD come into force? It came 1 year later. Force it came into in December 1993. It came into force. India is a ratifier or a part of CBD. Okay, as part of India becoming a part of CBD, India had to enact some legislations. What were these legislations? The main one is called the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Okay, have you heard of this? Biological Diversity Act of 2002. So today we will be discussing about the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. We will be discussing about Convention on Biodiversity, and there are two protocols. There are multiple protocols, but there are two important protocols under CBD. The first one is called Nagoya Protocol, and the second one is called the Cartagena Protocol. You have other protocols also, but these two are the most important ones. We will discuss that also. Okay. Many questions. Almost every year you have questions from either CBD, or you have questions from Biological Diversity Act, or you have questions from the contents of Biological Diversity Act. Okay, most people don't look at the contents of the act, but many questions will come from the contents of Biological Diversity Act of 2002. So very important topic. Most of your questions will come from these only. Now, what is the CBD about? Okay, the CBD and also the Biological Diversity Act of 2002, because the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 was came into existence or was enacted because India is a party to CBD. They have three main aims or objectives. Okay, let's just look at those three aims and objectives now. Okay, now the first one is conserving biodiversity. This is the first aim. The second one is sustainable use, and the third one is equitable sharing. Okay, the first one is conserving biodiversity, the second one is sustainable use, the third one is equitable sharing. What do these words mean? This is what we will look at now. Okay, it sounds very simple, very clear, so we'll give it more clarity because it is part of an agreement. Okay, right. Next, So whenever we look at CBD, we'll always look at only these three parts. Okay. The first one is conservation of biodiversity, second is sustainable, the third one is equitable sharing. Okay. One second. Okay. So when we say conservation of biodiversity, when we're looking at the CBD, we also, the conservation of biodiversity means it's not just for a particular region. It is the Earth's resources. The convention looks at the Earth's resources. The biodiversity of the entire world needs to be conserved. How do you do it? That is the first point of the convention, of the ratification of the convention. The second one, sustainable use. So yesterday when we were discussing, I told you that any international agreement that we look at will always focus on sustainability. Correct? I told you this, that anything that you look at, it's always going to talk about sustainability. Same thing is true with this also. How do you sustainably use the biological resources? Right? Now let's say an example is Tulsi. I'll give you more examples also, but first example, let's say Tulsi. Tulsi is a fantastic medicinal plant. Now, if you rampantly start using Tulsi and you start cutting it, and it's not growing at the same pace that you are cutting it, then what happens? There is a chance the species may die out. Correct? We don't want that happening because it's a very critical resource for us. Maybe it may be used for medicinal purposes, it may be used for decorative purposes, it may be used in worship. So for us, Tulsi is a very important biological resource. We don't want that resource to get extinguished. So we always focus on sustainable use. Sustainable use means the rate of replenishment should be equal to or greater than the rate at which it is depleting. Okay? That is sustainable use. Sustainable use means the rate at which the product is being replenished should be equal to or greater than the rate at which it is being destroyed or utilized. That is sustainable use. This is what it focuses on, sustainable use. Next, fair and equitable sharing. This is at the very heart of why CBD exists. Okay, fair and equitable sharing. We will discuss all aspects of fair and equitable sharing when we talk about Nagoya Protocol. Okay, right now we'll just introduce you to it. Fair and equitable sharing. Okay, now let's say there's a local community. Okay, I'll give you one example. We'll talk about Kani tribes and how they helped a company get access to a beautiful resource. We'll talk about that. But before that, we'll just take a generic example. We know that all tribal peoples, they all have their own medication systems. Correct? They will use some herbs with antiseptic properties to treat snake bites and many other things. If you have fever, they have their own medication. Now a lot of companies, pharma companies, Indian and abroad, both, they will want access to such knowledge. They want to understand what is the active ingredient in those herbs or medicines that is actually treating the problem. Correct? Because that will result in billions of dollars in profit for them. Correct? There are so many tribes that are immune to malaria also. Right? They are trying to seek out why that is the case. If a pharma company solves malaria, what is the revenue for it? It's not even $1 billion. We are talking in terms of $1 trillion now. If a pharma company can solve malaria, it is a $1 trillion company next. Right? Okay. So these companies want to come and take the traditional knowledge that these communities have. How are the communities benefiting then? They are not benefiting. They are absolutely not benefiting. They'll come, take and go. What can the community do to a big pharma company or a $1 billion company? Can it go and sue it in the courts? Is it sustainable? Absolutely not sustainable. How will they afford lawyers? And there will be an international company. They'll draw them to international court. What can you do? You can't do anything. So there has to be some mechanism to say that you have come from outside the community, but you're taking the community's knowledge and you're building something. So the community also deserves a part of the revenue, part of the profit. That is why the CBD exists. The Convention of Biodiversity exists for this one purpose, because there is an economic angle to it. But what are the different economic angles, that we will discuss later. Okay. So fair and equitable sharing to share the benefits arising from commercial and other utilization of genetic resources in a fair and equitable way. What are examples of genetic resources? Genetic resource can be anything, correct? Can you give me one or two examples? You and I are genetic resources. Okay. Animals are genetic resources. Plants are genetic resources. I mean, anything that you see, they're all genetic resources only. Understood? Genetic resources can be animals, plants. Small microorganism is also a genetic resource. Understood, no? So that is why the term genetic resources is used. So this is in a fair and equitable way. Now, this is a very important concept called access and benefit sharing. Okay. This we will discuss when we talk about Nagoya Protocol. Okay. Access and benefit sharing is key, or is at the heart of the Nagoya Protocol. Can anybody get access to the knowledge of these communities? It used to be true, right? Anybody could walk into the forest, talk to these tribals, take their information and go away. Today that is not okay at all. Okay, there is a framework that has been set up. And which act has set up this framework? The Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Okay, it has set up a framework wherein people cannot directly go to these communities and say, give me your knowledge, we will take it and go. That cannot be done. Okay, all knowledge access is controlled now. Every word has to be looked at in any act that you read. Okay, access is controlled. Controlled by whom? By the government. Okay, it is controlled by the government. Benefit sharing. Benefit sharing has to be there now. If you take knowledge from these communities, you have to give some benefits to them. And who is again regulating this? The central and state government is doing it. Both central government and state government is doing it. And who is doing what? That I will explain going ahead. But I hope this much is clear now. Okay. So, like I said, genetic resources examples. It can be microorganisms, plant varieties, animal breeds, genetic sequences, nucleotide and amino acid sequence information. This is all core biotechnology. So, you can manipulate nucleotide and amino acid sequence information. You can also modify what is called DNA and RNA information. You would have heard of mRNA vaccines now, right? What is that? That's all biotech. They are manipulating some genetic sequences to create something else. Correct, no? So all of these are genetic resources. So a very funny example comes to mind, right? What did Bill Gates recently do? Bill Gates is now into biotechnology. Everybody knows that, correct? He's trying to make thousands of billions of dollars or trillions of dollars now with biotechnology. So recently they released around I think 1 million mosquitoes. I don't know the exact number, but 1 million mosquitoes or even more. I am not sure. But in California, I think. Where was it? California. I don't know. Some state of United States, they released over 1 lakh mosquitoes. Genetically modified mosquitoes. Now, why would somebody go and release genetically modified mosquitoes anywhere? 1 million mosquitoes. If somebody is going and releasing, you will ask a question. Why are you releasing? Why are you breeding 1 million mosquitoes and why are you releasing it? Can you think of an answer?
Mosquito is suppressing one number of other mosquitoes, those danger to human.
Okay. So that is one of the answers. Correct. Now the mosquitoes that have been genetically modified, what they are saying is most of these will go and breed with other mosquitoes that cause diseases in humans like dengue, malaria, etc. So these genetically modified mosquitoes, once they breed with these mosquitoes, they will provide offspring that are not harmful to humans. This is what they are saying. Okay, but how true it is, that we will get to know later. Like what happened with coronavirus. If we have one more malaria epidemic, then we will know. So if you just go and read, you will get to know many more such things. Okay, you can go read. So don't believe everything that the media says. That is number one. Okay, just because the media is saying this is going to happen, it will not happen. But that is what they have said right now. So genetically modified mosquitoes were released into the wild so that the population of disease causing mosquitoes can be controlled. Okay, what is the other angle? The other angle is economic, where Bill Gates stands to gain hundreds of billions of dollars if it works. Then he will release mosquitoes all over the world. Okay, yeah. Okay, now one of the important points about CBD is that it recognizes sovereign rights of a state over their natural resources. Okay, now let's say a company finds some kind of a genetic resource within India, anti-malarial drug. What is the anti-malarial drug? You should know this. Huh? Huh? Quinoa. Have you heard of quinoa? Okay, that's an anti-malarial drug. You should know such things. If anything related to diseases, absolutely you need to know, because there are going to be questions every year relating to diseases. Famous diseases that cause lots of death, right? I shouldn't be saying famous diseases, but they are famous diseases. Malaria, dengue, hepatitis A, B, all of this you need to know. What is causing all of this? What is the drug that treats all of this? What are the international bodies that are helping in the treatment of all of it? You need to know. Okay. Now let's say there is a new genetic resource that some outside company finds in India that can treat malaria or dengue or one of these deadly diseases. Now this company cannot go and exploit it directly. Okay, so access is also controlled by whom? By the government. So that is why we call it, I just want to explain this term, that's all. I want to explain this term. Okay, so sovereign rights. What does sovereign right mean? Supreme power. Sovereign rights means supreme power. Nobody can question it. It's not just supreme power, it is unquestionable authority. You cannot question the authority. You cannot question the authority of the country over its rights over the natural resources, right? So CBD recognizes sovereign rights. A company cannot just go to the courts, international courts, or draw it to even Indian courts and say, oh, we found this resource in India, so it belongs to us. Just because you find it here, it does not belong to you. Who has the sovereign rights over it? The state. Okay, the Indian state has rights over it. Very important point. Okay. Now I'll just introduce you to Nagoya Protocol. Okay, but discussion will happen later. Now, what is the Nagoya Protocol? Have you heard of the Nagoya Protocol before? You have heard of the Nagoya Protocol. Okay. Nagoya Protocol is under the Convention on Biodiversity. It is under the Convention of Biodiversity. So, it is included in the CBD. Okay. So, Nagoya Protocol is a transparent legal framework. Okay. I'll just put this again, where it is called a transparent legal framework. Important to understand that the Nagoya Protocol is a legal framework. Okay, legal framework for what? For ABS. This is how you remember it. Legal framework for what? For ABS. What is ABS? Access and benefit sharing arising out of the utilization of genetic resources. So, whenever you talk about CBD, you are always thinking in terms of what? ABS, access and benefit sharing of what? Of genetic resources. Always remember that, access and benefit sharing of genetic resources. You remember it as ABS, access and benefit sharing. This is what the Nagoya Protocol talks about. We will look at it in detail later on, but this is the introduction. So, we spoke about three main aims and objectives of the CBD and also of the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. What are the three main aims and objectives? conservation of biodiversity, sustainable use, and the third one is fair and equitable sharing. Fair and equitable sharing also translates to access and benefit sharing. That is why Nagoya is so key to CBD. Understood, no? Now I will also introduce some terms to you, and you should not get confused. That is most critical. We will introduce a term called conference of parties. Conference of parties terms will be used whenever we are talking about environment and biodiversity, whenever we are talking about CBD, and also whenever we are discussing climate change. Okay, whenever we discuss climate change, we will be talking about COP, conference of parties. So most of the times students get confused. Oh, which COP is he talking about? They will say COP 21, COP 22, COP 15. How will you remember? Very difficult to understand. So you should have very clear understanding that the word conference of parties is coming when we are talking about biodiversity. The term COP or conference of parties is coming when you are talking about climate change. Okay. So what is the conference of parties? What is the COP? That is what we have to answer. Now you have created a framework. Okay, you have created a legal framework with the protocol, that is Nagoya Protocol. You have created a legal framework when you instituted the CBD, that is Convention on Bio, which is an international treaty, correct? So you have introduced some legal framework. Now you have to meet every few years or every year or every few months. You have to meet, and then you have to talk about what is happening due to this convention or due to this treaty, correct? You have to follow up what is happening. That is done through this conference of parties. Conference of parties means that these people, the people who have ratified, the countries who have ratified the CBD, they come and meet. They come and meet and talk. That is all it is. Conference of parties is a meeting. What is it? It is a meeting. It is a meeting of all the countries that come together. When does it happen? In case of CBD, it happens every 2 years. Okay? It happens every 2 years. So what do we do in a meeting? Like even let's say a company, forget a climate action meeting. Even if in a company meeting, what do we do? Let's say a review meeting. Any review meeting you take, what do? You look at what has been achieved since the last meeting, correct? You look at what has been achieved since the last meeting. Then you begin to decide, oh, next what do we have to do? That is what we decide. Any review meeting is like that, correct or wrong? Right, any review meeting. What was done before? What were the results of that? What is going to be done further? That is what COP also does. So don't get confused thinking, oh, COP is something we will not understand. COP is very simple. What is a COP? Conference of parties is a meeting. What kind of a meeting is it? It is a review meeting. Understood? Okay. So what do? It assesses progress, it sets future priorities. Correct. Now the plan of action has been seen. You have committed the review meeting and you have set a plan of action. Now, how do you put the plan of action into execution mode? How do you do it? How do you put the plan of action into execution mode? People have to give money, correct? The rich countries have to give money because they have taken a greater share of the world. They have taken a greater share in the world's resources. So the rich countries have to commit to action and resources and give it. If you read the history of climate change and biodiversity, you will understand that these countries will commit. They will say, oh, we will give you money, but then they will not give money. This is how rich nations act. This is also how rich people will act. Okay? They will say, we will do this for you, then they will not do. Okay? So you should be very wary of rich nations and rich people. Okay? I am not anti-rich, by the way. I am just saying. Be very careful. Okay, so I will also introduce you to Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Now we are not discussing it here, we will discuss it later on in the class. Right now I am just introducing you to it to show you that the CBD and Biological Diversity Act are one and the same, and the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 has been implemented to give effect to CBD. Okay, Why is the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 implemented? To give effect to CBD. Okay. Okay. They are one. The language will also be the same. Okay. Now look at the aims and missions of the aims and objectives that the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 hopes to achieve. What is it? One second. Okay. Biological diversity. What was the first point of CBD? Biological diversity. Second point. What was the second point of CBD? Third point. There what do you say? Fair and equitable sharing. Here also equitable sharing. Understood? Exactly same, no difference. Got it? This is a national framework. It will set up, the Biological Diversity Act sets up the whole system to give teeth to CBD. How it does it? By setting up institutions. We saw that with the Wildlife Protection Act, correct? No? Yesterday we saw that with Wildlife Protection. Today we are going to see that with CBD. It will set up NBA. It will set up SSBs. What are NBA, SSB? We will see now. Okay? Okay. So I'll just introduce you to these terms and we'll look at it again in some time. Okay? NBA is National Biodiversity Authority. It is established under the Biodiversity Act of 2002. What does it do? The main function is regulation of access. Okay? Now if international companies are coming in, somebody has to, in the convention and in the act we have studied that it has to be, access has to be regulated. Correct? We have already said that access has to be regulated. Who is going to do it? We said government is going to do it. Who in the government? This institution. Which institution? So this okay, I'll just keep it like this so I can mark both of them together. Okay. So this institution regulates access to biological resources. When you are limiting access to biological resources, it also means you are limiting access to knowledge, right? You are also limiting access to knowledge. So even this is controlled by the NBA. Understood, no? But there is one more element, right? There are three parts when it comes to like how the government is set up in three parts, no? Union government, state government and Panchayati Raj. That's how the Indian state is set up. Similarly, even for this it is set up in three parts. You have NBS, then you have SSBs or state biodiversity boards, and then you have BMCs or biodiversity management committees at the local levels. There are multiple words for this. I'll talk about all of that. Right? So access to knowledge sources, and it also looks at equitable benefit sharing. This only looks at it from a high level point of view, especially if we have some foreign companies that are coming in and they are seeking such knowledge from local communities. So NBA is more high level. Whenever foreign companies or foreign nationals are getting involved, NBA will get involved. Let's say Pfizer is coming to India and it's trying to seek some knowledge on some genetic resource, traditional knowledge, then NBA will get involved. Okay. Now, but if Indian companies are only coming or Indian national only want this, then the state biodiversity board will get involved. How it will get involved, I'll tell you a story later on. Okay. So that is about NBA. Now BMCs are nothing but biodiversity management committees, and these implement what the NBA says at a local level, similar to how your Panchayati boards work, no? Similar to that, these work at a local level, and again it's the same thing, promote conservation and sustainable use. But there's a very important point here. I don't know if you saw this. Can you tell me what is the most important point here? What is the most important point when it comes to BMC? No, sustainable use everybody is talking about. Promote conservation, CBD is only talking about. What is the most important point?
Documentation.
Documentation of biodiversity. This is the most important point. At no other level are we talking about documentation of biodiversity. Because why? Why are we not talking? Because nobody else knows about it. Who knows about it? The traditional communities know about it. and this is at the local level. So for the first time we are talking about documentation of biodiversity, right? So now documenting biodiversity in a specific region is a double-edged sword. Why? Why is it? Understand what is double-edged sword? No? Do you understand what is double-edged sword? Okay. So it's a double. I am saying documentation of biodiversity is a double-edged sword. Why?
There is no script.
Huh? The indigenous knowledge is now being documented. Why is it a double-edged sword? It can be double-edged sword means it can be a good thing and a bad thing. Okay. Correct. Right. Once you document all their knowledge, then let's say there are corrupt officers now in that board. They can sell it to other people. Correct? No. This is the problem. Then the community is not getting the advantage. This is one problem. What is the good that can come out of it? Everyone will know that it is this particular community that has this traditional knowledge. So if company goes and takes it from a corrupt officer also, and if somebody from this community gets to know that, they can go and approach the courts and say, oh, this was our information, and they have taken it without asking us. So from a good point of view, documentation of biodiversity is good. And when you say documentation of biodiversity, it includes genetic resources. Correct? No? Understood? What is biodiversity? Diversity of life. Examples of genetic resources include all life. Understanding? Clear? You understand the link between everything? So documentation of biodiversity, we always say it's a double-edged sword. When people can be taken up for a ride, but if they are taken for a ride, they can always claim that it was our knowledge and we have documented it. The rest is left to courts. That's a whole different story. I mean, access to justice in India is negligent. I mean, we don't have access to justice. If you look at the system of courts, you will understand. How many cases are pending in the courts? 4.5 crores. You know how many are pending in the Supreme Court? Supreme Court alone, 50,000 cases. You know how many judges are there in the Supreme Court? I mean, anyway, depending on vacancies and anything between 30 and 34. Okay. So if you have 50,000 cases, that's around 1700 cases per judge that is pending. How many days does the Supreme Court work? Less than an IT engineer. Okay, let's just put it like that. Everybody is jealous of IT engineers. No, because they have Saturday, Sundays off. So they work less than IT engineers. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, otherwise I will be in contempt of court later on if these videos get out. Okay. Okay. So biodiversity management committees means it include also preservation of habitats. This is also very important. Using local communities to preserve the habitat is a very, very good idea. Why? Because they already know all the flora and fauna in that area. They know what to destroy, what not to destroy. So that is also a very important thing where it says preservation of habitats and conservation of land and traditional knowledge and documenting it. Now we have come to a very key thing. This is called People's Biodiversity Registers. What is the People's Biodiversity Register? It is localized register documenting the biodiversity and associated traditional knowledge. Just what we spoke there, that register is this one, People's Biodiversity Register. This is where you are documenting all the traditional knowledge. And this is being facilitated by whom? Facilitated by Biodiversity Management Committee, which is a local level body. Okay, so we have introduced you to CBD, we have introduced you to Biological Diversity Act of 2002, I have introduced you to Nagoya Protocol. Now, we say India is a ratifier of CBD, that automatically also means India is a part of Nagoya Protocol. It does not automatically mean, but it is a party to Nagoya Protocol. What does the Nagoya Protocol say? ABS. Whenever you say Nagoya Protocol, what should you remember? ABS, access and benefit sharing. So anyone accessing India's genetic resources is answerable. Is answerable to whom? Answerable to the Indian state. and the Indian state will pass on the benefits to the local communities. But anybody who is accessing India's genetic resources is answerable to the Indian state. Now what happens if India is not a part of CBD? Let's just try and understand. What happens if India is not a part of CBD and India does not ratify the Nagoya Protocol? So now if some pharma company comes and takes your genetic resources, you will have to go and fight them. But where is the legal framework for it? Is there any legal framework for it? There is no legal framework if the CBD and Nagoya Protocol don't exist. That's why developing countries with great biodiversity like Brazil, African countries, tens of African countries, India, China, everybody is fighting for CBD, Nagoya Protocol, etc. and also for Cartagena Protocol and biosafety. It's so critical to us that our resources are not stolen from us. Correct, no? And this is providing the legal framework for it. Okay? Now, a very important concept called biopiracy. What is biopiracy? Once again, whenever such terms come, what should we do? We should split the term. Two parts. Biopiracy. Have you heard of piracy? Where have you heard? You would have heard piracy at least in two contexts. What is the first context? Film piracy. Means, what does piracy mean in film piracy means? They will record it in some tent and they will give out an illegal copy. What will they give? They will give out an illegal copy. Piracy is hence illegal. Okay, piracy is illegal. What are you doing in that case? You are illegally taking the movie. Correct? That is film piracy. Piracy means illegally taking something that is not yours. Okay, you are not allowed to take it generally, but by becoming a pirate, you are taking it illegally, right? So that is piracy. Where else have you heard this term piracy? Sea piracy. So you know Captain Jack Sparrow, huh? Everybody knows Captain Jack Sparrow. So that is he's a sea pirate. So what do sea pirates do? They take what is not theirs from other ships. Correct? No, they loot. So in a way, is piracy any different from robbing? Is it different? It is not different. Piracy is exactly what is called robbing. Correct? Piracy means you are taking something that is not yours. You understand the term piracy now. Bio means life. Biopiracy means taking something that is not yours with respect to bios. That is with respect to life. Correct? No, that is biopiracy. In this case, instead of biopiracy, you can also call it genetic resource piracy. Biopiracy is nothing but genetic resource piracy. What are genetic resources? Example, all life. So you are able to connect now. So this is how you should break up the term. Even in prelims, you will come. They will ask, what does this term mean? Or you will read it in a sentence and you will not be able to make sense. How will you make sense of it? You have to break it down. Break down the term, try to understand what it is. Okay. So this is biopiracy. So the practice of commercially exploiting. Now we are going to look at the definition. What did I say? Unless there is an economic element to something, no international treaty happens. Nobody cares. Only when money is involved or some economic element is there, politicians want to get involved. Correct? No. Politicians will get involved only then. So when you are talking about biopiracy also, a critical understanding that you should have is the practice of commercially exploiting naturally occurring biochemical or genetic resources. Why do you pirate movies? You don't want to pay. Correct? Why do sea pirates exist? Because they don't want to work and they want to take something. So is it commercial exploitation? Yes. This is also commercial exploitation. No difference. Just think and write. Commercial exploitation of naturally occurring biochemical genetic material, especially by obtaining patents. Okay. So there are different kind of pirates, correct? One are sea pirates that are outside of the laws of all lands. Then you have movie pirates who are sitting in rooms and they are doing it. There is a different kind of pirate. These are international pirates that act as companies, that act as billion-dollar companies, but they are still thieves. Billion-dollar companies that are still thieves, correct? How do they do it? They obtain a patent. Okay, once they obtain a patent for 20 years, you can do nothing about it. But it is not even theirs, correct? They are taking some genetic resource or traditional knowledge from some community. They are not paying them. Then they are taking this genetic resource and then they are using patents. Understood? That is biopiracy, where they are taking resources from somebody else and they are not paying them, and they are also using patents and protecting themselves from somebody else who is suing them. Okay? This is biopiracy. Now, CBD offers a platform to fight biopiracy. Now, if these big billion-dollar companies indulge in biopiracy, where will you go? The legal framework is provided by CBD. That's why we need it. Okay. We look at two interesting stories. Okay. Because obviously, as students, you should question everything. Now you are saying, sir, that CBD exists and interests of locals are protected. What is the proof? Correct. We should have some success stories to say, oh, this has resulted in something like this. I'll give you two stories, one before CBD and one after CBD, and Biological Diversity Act also, because CBD and Biological Diversity Act are one and the same in terms of mission. In 1980s, there still is, but there's an institute called Tropical Botanic Garden and Research Institute. Okay, this is in Kerala. 1980 means, has the CBD come into effect? CBD has not come into effect. So this is a story before CBD. So this institute is called Tropical Botanic Garden and Research Institute. They started going into the forests of Kerala because they wanted to find something, and there they met the Kani tribes. Okay, the Kani tribes. The Kani tribes were very energetic people. Okay, and everybody was surprised. How do you have so much energy? I don't know if you have seen tribal people, if you have seen National Geographic, right? They will work from morning 5 o'clock, even before that, 4:30 till evening 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, everybody will gather together and sit in a community, and they will eat, drink, enjoy, put a fire. That's almost all tribes across the world. They have the same practice. All tribes. Now, the Kani tribes were exceptionally energetic. So, these people went and asked, how are you so energetic? Right? Because if we work from morning 5 to morning 10 o'clock, we are already tired. We need to sleep for 2 hours and all that. Right? We are so tired. So, they started asking these Kani tribes, how are you so energetic? So, they found that they were eating some kind of a fruit, local fruit, that was giving them that kind of energy. Okay. So, now these researchers, what did they do? They said, okay, what is this fruit? What is the active ingredient in this fruit that is giving these people this kind of energy? That is what they wanted to know. At that time, they found and they managed to isolate, that is this TBGRA people. They found and isolated the active element that was giving them such kinds of energy. It is not just one element, but this is also a very important thing. So it isolated, and that was called Arogya Pacha. Okay. Now this was isolated and they made a herbal product using it. They made a herbal product that is called Jeevani. Herbal means Ayurvedic only in some. So Jeevani is a herbal drug. It has anti-fatigue properties. Correct. So this is not very different from the advertisements that you see on TV today. Salman Khan will come and say, take Revital, and you become very energetic. Right? You see a 60-year-old man who is so energetic, and then you say, oh, maybe this drug works. Right? So similar to that, you have Arogya Pacha is a herbal drug with anti-fatigue properties. and there was overall health benefit from Jeevani. They saw that. Correct. This is the story. Now, once this happened, the research institute also gave a part of their profits, and there was some royalty sharing with the Kani tribe members. Okay. By itself, this research institute went and gave them something. No legal framework existed at that point in time, but they still gave some benefits to them. A welfare trust was created, and then it was handed out to them. Okay, this is one of the stories. Now, is everybody as good as those research institute people that they will go and give the benefits to the community? No, this is a success story where the research institute actually went and gave it to those people. But there are hundreds of stories where these tribal communities have been robbed. Okay. Now, one more is Dandeli honey. We spoke about Dandeli yesterday also. We spoke about the Anshi National Park and so on. There was a Indian company. Okay, this Indian company wanted access to Dandeli honey because they found that Dandeli honey had many antioxidants and other properties which resulted in a better quality of honey than from other places. Okay, so what did they do? They went to the State Biodiversity Board, that is the Karnataka Biodiversity Board, and they said, we want knowledge and access to this particular kind of honey, help us. So what did the Karnataka Biodiversity Board do? It went to the local communities through what? We just discussed through what? No, through what? Through the local biodiversity management committees, the Karnataka Biodiversity Board went. Why was the Karnataka Biodiversity Board involved and not the NBA? Because it's an Indian company, an Indian citizen who is approaching. So it's a lower level thing. When foreign companies or foreign nationals get involved, then the NBA will get involved. Okay. So the Karnataka Biodiversity Board got involved. Now they managed to extract honey, and these companies managed to get what they wanted from the honey also. Okay. And they also figured out a way to sustainably do it, which is most important. Okay. They managed to do it sustainably. Now the local tribal communities and the local communities that had the knowledge regarding this honey, how to get the bees to cultivate it, how to harvest it, how to commercially utilize it. How to commercially utilize it was done by the company, but the rest of the things was done by the local community. So you had to give something back to them. That was negotiated by whom? The state biodiversity boards. Okay, and the biodiversity management committee, local level. They are negotiating. In fact, it is one of their jobs to do it. Okay, it is one of their jobs to do it. So now the funds were channeled into local development activities there. Funds were given, but how well the funds are utilized, that's a different question. We will not get into that now. Okay, when we talk about corruption, we will talk about that. Okay, but you get the idea of what I am saying. Some funds were given. Who utilized it, where they utilized it is always a different story. This is an example of how the Biodiversity Act of 2002, which was a result of CBD, helped the local communities in the forests of Dandeli regarding Dandeli honey. Okay, this is another success story. Like I said, impacts of the Biodiversity Act, the National Biodiversity Authority or the NBA and the State Biodiversity Board are responsible for facilitating these agreements between the local communities and the people who are seeking such information. Okay. Now we will actually discuss the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Everything that we have discussed now, we will summarize it in this act. So we have discussed about the Biodiversity Act of 2002, and there are three main aims and objectives. Again, we'll just recap it. One is biological diversity, the second one is sustainable use, the third one is fair and equitable sharing. We are just repeating that again and again. Okay. Now we also understood that there are 3 levels of setup. I am just going a little quickly now. Okay, 3 levels of setup. The first one is NBA, that is National Biodiversity Authority. Mainly it has to do with conservation and sustainable use of gives access and knowledge. So this is at a higher level. Okay, mainly the NBA is concerned when external elements are involved. Anything internal, we have something called the State Biodiversity Boards. So these are the State Biodiversity Boards, or SSB. So SBB is established in every state in India. Okay, it is established in every state in India. When we are talking about the Dandeli honey case, so what did you say? Who came in? The Karnataka Biodiversity Board came in. Similarly, we have state biodiversity boards in every state in India. It deals with the conservation, use of biological resources and sharing of benefits at a state level. And it is also the role of the NBA or the SBB to negotiate or help the local communities negotiate an agreement with anybody who is seeking such traditional knowledge. Okay. Next, at the local level, what do we have? We have biodiversity management committees. Again, the most important point of the biodiversity management committees at a local level is people's biodiversity registers. What does this have? This has the information on the traditional knowledge of genetic resources of that area. Clear? Huh? Okay. Next, regulation of access to biological resources. Now, foreign individuals, companies or institutions, all of this require approval from whom? From NBA. Anything foreign requires approval from whom? NBA. Indian citizens, companies, they can directly approach SBB. Okay. So these are the major points of Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Okay. Now I want to discuss some important terms. I can also discuss Cartagena Protocol and Nagoya Protocol in detail. You want me to do that now, or shall we do something else? I don't want to overburden you. You want to look at both the protocols? You look at the protocols? Okay. Nagoya Protocol and Cartagena Protocol. You already know this. Okay. We will also give you the notes later if you want. No problem. Huh? I don't know if it's visible. Is it visible? Readable? Huh? Okay. When I say Nagoya Protocol, what are you going to say? ABS. Nagoya Protocol is ABS, access to benefit sharing. What is it? It's a legal framework. I have already said this. So it is used to ensure fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources. Okay, this has to go to the communities or to the country. Nagoya Protocol is where? It is an international agreement. So who is responsible for talking? The Indian state. The Indian state is responsible, and the rights are also given to whom? The Indian states. Local communities are not involved here. Local communities come when? When we are talking about the Biodiversity Act of 2002. When we are talking at an international level, who are they dealing with? They are dealing with the state, that is the Indian state. Understood? Okay. Now, it ensures that indigenous communities can set terms on how they can give access to their resources and knowledge. How is that done? That is done through the Biological Diversity Act of 2002. Now you are understanding why the Biological Diversity Act of 2002 was implemented. Because whatever has been ratified in CBD, Nagoya Protocol, Cartagena Protocol, everything needs to have some legal framework. That legal framework is provided by the Biodiversity Act. Understood, no? Now it ensures, okay, promotes the establishment of a global ABS clearing house as a means of sharing information related to benefit sharing agreements. What does this mean? Can you tell me? What is the global ABS clearing house and why is it necessary? So here we say that This global ABS sharing house is a means of sharing information related to benefit sharing agreements to enhance legal certainty and transparency. These are the important words. Okay, I will tell you again. Now we'll slow down a little. Okay, so it promotes the establishment of a global ABS clearing house as a means of sharing information related to benefit sharing agreements to enhance legal certainty and transparency. There are two components that we have to look at here. Okay, what are the two components? Why is a ABS clearing house necessary? A clearing house means it helps exchange information between different countries. It is like a hub. Okay, so now let's say I am a clearing house in India, and there is one more clearing house in US. There is one more ABS clearing house in Brazil, because Brazil is also a very rich source of biodiversity, right? India is also a very rich source of biodiversity. How do you know India is a very rich source of biodiversity? Can you give me one example? Huh? Western Ghats, okay. But statistically also I'll tell you. You know how? India's geographical landmass of the world is 2.4%. You know what is our share of biological diversity in the world? 8%. Fantastic. So with just 2.4% of the land mass, we have 8% biological diversity. That is over 3x of what we need to have. So India is a very critical source of biodiversity. Similarly, Brazil also has similar ratios. Okay, but Brazil is a larger country than us. But the good thing is they have Amazon, which is still largely unexplored. Okay, so we need a global ABS clearing house for sharing information related to benefit sharing agreement. Now, when you document your traditional knowledge or your traditional information on genetic resources and have it at the ABS clearing house, then the US may seek, let's say a pharmaceutical company in the US like Pfizer is working on something, but they want to see if other communities also have the data. Where will they go? Will they come and ask you directly, oh, do you have this data? No. At the state level, they will talk to each other and say, oh, maybe this country has this data, or Brazil has this data, India has this data, China has this data. It may also happen that multiple countries have this data. Then what is the pharmaceutical company going to do? Can it pay everybody equally? Is it going to pay? A company does not want to pay. No company wants to pay anybody anything. So what are they going to do? So that's why you need a ABS clearing house where this information is stored, saying that we had this genetic resource before you, so that something can be worked out at the global level itself. Okay, that's why you have a ABS clearing house that has information about benefit sharing agreements. This will result in some amount of legal certainty and transparency, so that not everybody is fighting for the same price. Understood, no? That is also available under Nagoya Protocol. Now we will look at the Cartagena Protocol. When we talk about the Cartagena Protocol, the first term that should come to your mind is biosafety. Okay, the first term that should come to your mind is biosafety. Whenever we say Cartagena Protocol, we say biosafety. Whenever we say Nagoya Protocol, we say ABS. Okay. Now, another important term associated with Cartagena Protocol is LMOs. LMO means living modified organisms. Okay, living modified organisms. So we are in the realm of biotechnology now. Got it, no? Living organisms are being modified. Why will somebody go and modify a living organism? So that it suits them better. Simple. Correct? Okay. If I have to give you a real life example of LMOs, husbands are also LMOs only. How are husbands LMOs? Because the wives are changing them however they want. Correct? No. So husbands are also living modified organisms, LMOs. Why are the wives changing the husbands? So that it suits their needs. It suits their needs, whatever the needs of the wives are. Correct? No. Similarly, biotechnology companies also change the living organisms in a way that it is more useful to them. Understood? This is LMOs. Give me an example of an LMO. Correct. GM mustard. What is GM mustard? Do you know? Okay. Why was it built? You know?
Modified the gene of that
Mustard. To achieve what?
increases the productivity.
It increases the productivity. Okay. Reduces the diseases. So generally, this is what we look at. We are talking about agricultural products now. Okay, we are talking about GM mustard. I'll also talk about BT cotton. Okay, and we will also talk about another important genetically modified crop. So when we look at crops, what do we want from crops? We want high yield, no loss, no diseases, less trouble. Okay, so crops are also like children. If you think about it, children are always trouble, but we still want them. Why? We don't know. Let's not answer those questions. But we'll just look at crops now. So GM mustard, what is happening is the yield is getting increased and it is more pest resistant. It is not just this. You can also modify crop genetically to give you better proteins, vitamins, etc. Right? For example, there is a product called golden rice. Have you heard? Golden rice will help release an enzyme in your body that is a precursor to processing vitamin A. So your vitamin A levels get better. Okay? So in some communities or in some places where children are suffering from vitamin A deficiency or adults are also suffering from vitamin A, golden rice is being given to them. Okay, because those communities are eating only rice. So that is also another use. Can you deliver micronutrients and vitamins in a better way to the public? That is also one of the uses. Yield, resistance to diseases, better delivery of micronutrients, vitamins and others. Okay? Huh? Fortified rice. Same. Okay? Okay. So these are examples of LMOs or living modified organisms. Now, we are talking about the positive aspects of LMOs. Correct? No? We are talking about positive aspects of LMOs. Can LMOs also be negative? How? Is a virus a LMO? Correct. So that is also one way that you can look at, right? So an LMO can also act as a threatening influence. Threatening influence to the natural ecosystem. Yesterday we were talking about what? A lake ecosystem or a pond ecosystem. We were talking about that. Correct. Now he spoke about threatening the natural ecosystem. Now let's say the lake has normal fishes, right? And it has its own ecosystem, it's thriving. Now if I bring an invasive species to it, let's say I bring a piranha. You know piranhas? Piranhas are fishes that eat other fishes and they destroy everything near them. So let's say I bring 100 piranhas and I leave it into the lake. What happens to the lake ecosystem? It is destroyed. Correct? Because it's an invasive species. The piranha is not a LMO, just an example. Now let's say you bring an LMO into some natural environment. There is a good chance it will get that it will threaten the natural ecosystem of that place. Possible? Can it be possible? Is it possible that it can be used in a biowar? You can use it as a biowar. Have you heard of the plant Parthenium? Is it Indian? It's not Indian. You know who planted it here? Most people say it's CIA. We don't know. Even I don't know. No political things, huh? Okay. Yeah. So that is Parthenium is an example. It's not a LMO, but I'm just explaining to you. Okay. Similarly, LMOs can cause great harm in a very short period of time. Very short period of time. That is why there has to be a precautionary approach whenever we are dealing with LMOs. And the Cartagena protocol has to do with what? Biosafety. Here, just you see how the term has been used. It is not saying that we will harvest all the potential of LMOs, or we will say not saying economic viability of LMOs. That's not what the Cartagena protocol is about. It is about biosafety. Okay. So precautionary approach is necessary. Let's say England wants to send us some LMO. Will you take it from them? Or Pakistan wants to send us some LMO. Will you take it from them? Why won't you take it? Could be dangerous. So the states who are part of the Cartagena protocol have established a biosafety clearing house. This biosafety clearing house, like the one in
the other protocol, is a center for information sharing and information dissemination also. And they can also say, oh, this LMO we don't want in our country, so don't bring it here, don't send it here. Okay, so that can be done now. Biosafety clearance is usually the external and assist the countries in implementation of the protocol. Now, if you have gone to other countries like Europe and all, if you are trying to take a liquid, then it's generally not allowed. Why? There is a good chance it may contain some LMOs they don't want. That does not mean you can't smuggle it, but they are just being careful. Understood? No? I am not saying it's a smuggling. Okay, just so. So, Cartagena protocol has to do with biosafety. It deals with LMOs, deals only with LMOs, and how LMOs entry is restricted, how LMOs can be used to better our lives, especially with respect to agriculture, can also be with respect to health or anything else. We will discuss LMOs also. Okay? These are the two key protocols to CV. Okay? So, if you look at examples of LMOs, we talk about agricultural crops. We talk about BT cotton, right? BT cotton gets its name from the bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis. So it emits a protein that is toxic to pests. Correct. So it produces a protein that is toxic to certain pests. You have herbicide resistant soya beans. So what they have done is they don't want to reduce how much herbicide or insecticide they want to spray. So they said we will change the soya bean itself so that we spray whatever we want and nothing happens to the soya bean. So that is herbicide resistant soya bean. Like I said, golden rice, genetically modified to produce a beta carotene, a precursor of vitamin A. Okay. Now in animals, we have GM salmon. Salmon is consumed a lot in North America. It is found in cold waters. So GM salmon can be grown quicker. That means more profit. GM mosquitoes, I told you about Bill Gates. So it is this domain. Microorganisms like some bacteria can be used in bioremediation of lakes and so on and so forth. The GM yeasts that can be used in brewing or biofuel production. What is brewing? Make beer, no? It's all brewing only. So GM yeast also can be given to drink. You can have LMS. And biofuel production you would have understood. What is biofuel? Ethanol. Ethanol based fuels. For all that you can use. Okay, these are other success stories we look at it. I think we have covered Cartagena protocol now. Okay.